Some of you may know I have a bit of a history in linguistics. I didn't make it very far because I don't get along with liars and stupid people. And at this point in my life, I think that's really all that's left. That's really all there is in linguistics. It's liars and stupid people. So I have a story that I thought of, and I've kind of been wanting to tell for a little while, about this specific incident. So I was on a public forum. Somebody asked me something about why I don't even vaguely remember the specific question, but I remember what it was about. It was about something about why English spelling is weird, something like you know. It might have been about why this specific word is spelled this way or something. I don't remember the details of it, but it was along the lines of why is English spelling frickin' crazy? And my response, by this point, I had like a sort of a stock canned response because I've responded to this sort of question so many times, and it's basically along the lines of, well, English doesn't actually have an alphabet, and this is true. It doesn't. When you consider what is an alphabet? An alphabet is a writing system where the letters represent sounds. That's not how English works. What sound does C make? Well, in the word car, it indicates a k. In the word science, it indicates s twice. In the word church, it indicates ch twice. So what sound does C make? And you might be like, well, in science, there's an I and an E after the C both times. And in church, there's an H after the C both times. Okay. What about Machiavelli? There's an H after that C, and it says K again. So you can't say that CH says ch in English. Machiavelli is an Italian name, granted. But we have... What about Chevrolet? What about... Where is it behind me? Chrome. CH. Chrome. What about... right? It's not an alphabet. It just isn't. And you can do this with pretty much all of the letters. Pretty much all of the letters. What does Z say? Z is one of the best and most reliable. What does Z say? Z. You'd think, well, what about pizza? What about the word pizza? Damn. Damn. What does R say? Well, in a lot of dialects of English, P-A-R-K is pronounced pak. And this is so much the case that the Korean last name Pak is written P-A-R-K in English. And this confuses Americans, of course, because they'll pronounce it Park, and that's not the Korean last name. The Korean last name is Pak. And, if you look at it in Korean, it's clearly Pak. And if you look at it in, like, Cyrillic, it's Pak. And, but when you look at it in English, it's P-A-R-K. So there, that R, what is the R doing? This is something special to English. That R isn't doing anything. Not an alphabet. And now, for context which I understand, a lot of people naively take this to mean that I'm saying that English doesn't have a writing system. No, there's plenty of writing systems around the world that are not alphabets, right? Like Arabic has an abjad, Hindi has an abugida, Korean has, I'm not even sure what you would call it. It's lovely, but it's descended from the same ancestry. Um, it's almost certainly descended from Aramaic. The vowels, I think, are novel, but the consonants are Aramaic consonants. Like if you look at the Korean S, that's an Aramaic shin. If you look at the Korean M, that's an Aramaic mem, right? Like very clearly. And some of them are like rotated and things like that anyway. So similar ancestry. But then you look at like Hanzi, Chinese characters. Yeah, it's not an alphabet by any stretch, because each character represents a syllable, a syllable, like a syllabary, you know. But it also has at least a component that indicates the meaning, right? So you might have on a lot of somewhat newer characters, you might have from the last few centuries or so, you might have a radical and a phonetic component, right? So you've got something that sort of indicates the pronunciation and something that indicates the meaning. So it acts a little bit like a really big, awkward syllabary in some ways. You can kind of sort out the sound a little bit, but it's not an alphabet by any stretch. Um, you know, and yeah, there's a lot of these. There's a lot of writing systems like Cherokee. The Cherokee system is a syllabary. Ojibwa is a syllabary. Ancient Mayan, or Mayan hieroglyphs. Syllabary is fairly accurate, but kind of like ancient Egyptian, there's components that indicate syllables, and then there's components that indicate whole words. So it's not 100%. You know, things like that. So there's other ways you can have a writing system. English absolutely has a writing system, but it doesn't have an alphabet. And this is further conflated because English's writing system is absolutely 100% for sure derived from the Latin alphabet. And the Latin alphabet is used across Europe, as I think anybody is going to be familiar. And in everywhere else, it's used as an alphabet. So it's kind of weird to say, well, English doesn't have an alphabet. I get that. I get why people would sort of object to that. But when a linguist objects to this, it's funny as hell. Because you motherfucker, are trained to understand what I just said. You know this. You know English doesn't have an alphabet because you know that I'm using the term alphabet in this technical way. That I'm not using it in a naive, like, writing system, right, sort of meaning. I'm using it with a meaning that the characters represent sounds or phonemes or something. Kind of like pinyin doesn't, the symbols don't really, the letters don't really represent sounds so much as phonemes or really close approximations to phonemes. When you get into it, you can kind of see what I'm saying. Like some of the vowels, like why would you write those 4 different vowels with this one letter? Oh, it actually does make sense, and it's a nuance that like Wade Giles missed, right? So Wade Giles is a freaking mess. It's really hard to read, I think, compared to pinyin. Pinyin is because things like C and ch use the same vowel because there's no reason not to. There's no reason not to right there. So, and Wade Giles completely missed that and did something completely different. Anyway, yeah, so English clearly doesn't have an alphabet, and linguists like to argue with me about this, even though they know better. Like, I know they know better. They were trained to know better. So then usually I don't engage this because I know it's probably an idiot. Probably one of the stupid linguists. And when you're stupid, you can't help it, right? There's two basic ways you can be wrong. One is you can be stupid, and there's not really anything you can do about that. And the other one is that you're lying, or you're complicit with the stupidity of others. That one you can do something about, and more likely than not, you're actively intending to do it. So that one I have a problem with. It's when you are complicit, when you're a liar, that's when I have a problem. So there was this one linguist who, you know, took objection to me saying that English doesn't have an alphabet and blah blah blah. He gave me this stock response that I've seen a billion times and I know exactly how to counter it. And then he didn't know what to do because he'd never seen anybody who actually knew what the fuck they were talking about respond to him like this. So he started waffling on about, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. Even linguists make mistakes like this. And then he started listing off instances of usages of the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, for formal transcription within linguistics where there were inconsistencies. And I'm like, motherfucker, I got you now, because what you just admitted to, right? And he was saying that this is okay. It's okay because everybody makes mistakes. But a second before this, when he was talking about English, he was saying that it was an alphabet, but it was imperfect, and there were all these mistakes in it, right? Motherfucker. And he was saying that the IPA is superior. Right? So that's the core of the argument where it's a problem, right? So he's saying that the IPA is sort of an ideal, a standard, right? It's better than any other alphabet. And then he's goes into talking about how linguists in practice screw it up, right? And he gave the example of the Chinese R, right, which isn't really an R, and it's described incorrectly. And I was like, so you're complicit. You're one of those linguists who's complicit because you know what's wrong. You can see it. You're telling me about it in detail with examples. You can see that this is exactly the sort of problem that is occurring with the English alphabet, where the way it's being used is not as an alphabet. So it's not an alphabet. But you're trying to argue that it is an alphabet, which is dishonest. And the reason that you're trying to argue this is to defend your linguists who made mistakes. Defend your fellow linguists who made mistakes. So not only are you dishonest, you're complicit. You're actively pushing a lie. You're actively lying to people. Bye, motherfucker. I blocked his ass and never talked to him again. But like there was a couple responses in there where it was clear that he was just absolutely bewildered that anybody would confront him in this way. I'm like, no, you're a liar. You're complicit in pushing false information that you demonstrated knowledge of it being false. You demonstrated that you comprehend that it's false, and you're pushing it actively, and you're trying to get me to push it as well. Fuck you. No, I don't play that game. There's two ways to be wrong. You can be dumb. You can be a liar. I don't have a problem if you're dumb, because you can't help it. I have a problem if you're a liar, because you're doing that on purpose.